If you like this sort of content, please come see me over at menaregood.substack.com. A lot more content there. It's free. It's a community that's growing. Come on and join us. Men are good, as are you. Extreme misogyny, exposing the global myth. Men are good, as are you. Indeed, men are good, as are you, and as is the two women I'm here with today. I love them both dearly. Both have good Substacks you need to go and check out. Hannah's is Psychobabble, and Janice's is the Fiamingo File. Both of them are amazing. Janice's Substack, every time I read a new post of hers, it's like I think, why didn't I think of that? And it's just, her stuff is amazing, just literally amazing. And Hannah is amazing in so many ways, but one of which is she's a psychiatrist. She's a psychiatrist and she's into men's stuff. She understands boys and men. I mean, this is just a boon for us. So thank you, Hannah, for being you and for being here today. And what we're going to talk about today is global misogyny. You know, they're talking about extreme misogyny is every place. And it's causing all sorts of problems. And if you don't believe me, you got to just look at the news. You know, misogyny to be treated as extremism in the UK. Diverting hate. This was in the US. Talking about misogyny in the manosphere is causing all of these problems, etc. Extreme misogyny fuels mass violence. Ah, yes, misogynistic mass violence is on the rise. Why are we ignoring it? Inside the manosphere, understanding extreme misogyny online. Misogyny to be treated as extremism under new government plans to tackle rise in hatred. Yes, it is. So you see, this is every place. Every place you look, you find this idea that the hatred of women is commonplace and it's creating violence. It's creating all sorts of trouble. And we're here to try and dismantle that myth. And, you know, they're talking about here, misogyny to be treated as extremism under the new government plans to tackle rise in hatred. And what they did was they started off by doing this is in Australia, they started off by doing a study, quote, study. We'll put that in air quotes. And the study, here it is, the problem of anti-feminist manfluencer Andrew Tate in Australian schools. Women teachers' experiences of resurgent male supremacy. Just the title gets you going, don't you think? Manfluencer?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
It's a very contemptuous word. Whenever I see academics borrowing concepts from the so-called manosphere, I really wonder what they're doing. Why are they deriving their notions and their terminology from popular culture? You know, shouldn't they be holding themselves to a different standard and approaching their subject in a more objective and even-handed manner? But clearly they are not. They're not interested in even-handedness or objectivity.
Good point. Very good point. So this study is just, it's amazing. And here's the abstract here. And let's go through this a little bit at a time. You'll get a sense of what this study is about. Abstract. There is growing visibility of online manfluencers who espouse extreme masculine ideals and share them with their audience of boys and young men. Taking this phenomenon as a launchpad, we join the tradition of research that exposes sexism in schools and theorizes girls' and women's experiences of working within and against masculine hegemony. Oh boy, that's a mouthful right there, guys. What do you think of that?
I'm just looking for something that they're setting out to prove, which clearly it isn't. They're already name calling. They're already painting, people with broad brushes, and clearly out to get someone, which is not. I had to check several times if this was actually research. It just the whole thing just gave me this opinion piece feeling.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes,
that was my experience
exactly. Too. Yes, yeah. It's shocking that we have come to the point now where all of these assumptions are not in any way tested or proved. There's no sense on the part of these researchers that they have to first show us that indeed there is a deep problem with sexism in schools. There's no attempt to show us even that Andrew Tate himself, they say at one point early on that he is a self-declared misogynist.
Why?
I'm not an expert in Tate, I hasten to say. I have heard him say on numerous occasions that he loves women.
Yes.
I have never heard him say that he hates women. In fact, I've heard him deny that he is a misogynist. So what kind of a misogynist states repeatedly that he loves women, talks to men about what they need to do to improve themselves so that they will be attractive to women, and denies repeatedly that he is a misogynist? Usually if they're a misogynist, they're pretty upfront about it. So from the very beginning, this is clearly a study that has already decided what it is going to find and is determined that's the only possible thing it can find.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I think I think the problem is that they don't at all define misogyny. So I think according to their definition of misogyny, he himself has said, things about men and women that they would define as misogyny, but that is the ongoing problem, that they don't define misogyny, they don't define sexism, they don't define hegemony. How do we pronounce it? Hegemony. They don't put traditionality. They just sort of throw out these terms without bothering to cite or explain anything, and then the meaning, there's no meaning. It's just they're just lost in their own sort of academic, trying to sound academic. That's what it is. They're trying to sound academic, and no one checked it. No one said this isn't the way that papers are written, and this will never be approved, because I could go on and on. That was my 2%. I'm so upset.
It's true.
That is such a good point. Yeah, and actually, Hannah, what you were saying there, it reminded me of a simple point that I had forgotten, which is that how these people, these feminist ideologues, define misogyny is anyone who contests any element of feminism. So the fact that Tate and other, manosphere content producers, the fact that they contest feminist ideology automatically makes them misogynists in these and many other researchers' worldview. Yeah, because feminists very successfully years ago managed to equate feminism, being a feminist, with being pro-woman, and anyone who is not feminist must hate women by definition.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And now they've given boys the words and the arguments to also defy feminism, and that's why they're now dangerous.
Yes. Yeah.
Indeed. Let's go on. Drawing on qualitative interviews with 30 women teachers in Australia. We suggest the sexism identified in early research endures in schools today, resurrected in part by the ubiquity and influence of one specific misogynist manfluencer, Andrew Tate. Yeah. So 30 women teachers they interviewed. Why no male teachers, huh? Makes you wonder. And they're thinking this one guy, this one fellow who's like in his 30s, right? He's got a lot of followers, but daggone, one guy is throwing their whole schools into chaos? That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. He must be a powerful
amazing guy.
Yeah. No, it's purely qualitative, and they also mention that the interviews that they conduct are between 30 and, was it 70 minutes or 90 minutes?
I think it was 90.
90. I mean, I doubt any of the interviews were 90. That's just sort of because then they would have maybe more to go on, more protein. But they know that there are no numbers on how many, which interviews were what, and how many teachers had just a 30-minute interview. There was no, the methodology is so shoddy. I don't have words. Janice, do you have words?
Yes, I agree. I mean, I was, again, I've said this before many times. I'm not a social scientist. I wasn't trained in social scientific methodologies, but even I could say that 30 teachers doesn't seem to me a very significant number when we're talking about the experience of thousands of teachers in Australia as a whole. The how those teachers were selected is not explained in very much detail, except it seems that they say at one point that they drew these interviewees from their research networks, or from, I think they said, from their professional networks. So in other words, these were colleagues and friends, like-minded, I'm sure,
Right.
and they advertised on social media. So they advertise saying, we're looking for female teachers to come forward and talk about their experiences of misogyny in the classroom.
Right.
So guess
Yeah.
what? Women who had had experiences or believed they had had experiences of misogyny in the classroom came forward.
Yeah, that's not going to be a
Wow.
bias sample.
Yeah. I thought that even qualitative research was supposed to be representative. It was supposed to proceed to the point where the researchers had good reason to believe that even bringing in more interviewees, more samples, they wouldn't get any broader or more representative picture of the subject that they're seeking to analyze. And there's no way that 30 women self-selected on the basis that they had things to say about misogyny represent the whole of the experience of female teachers in Australia. Did they seek any non-feminist teachers? Did they interview anybody who said, no, I do not experience the things that you're claiming are ubiquitous in the classroom? I've never had students who were unruly or misogynistic. Like, there is no way that these results are replicable. And as far as I understand, if your results are not replicable at all, then it's no good. It's simply confirming what the researchers were determined to find.
Yes. Yes. I think that sums it
Yeah.
up pretty well. Indeed.
They also had there's no, they also say they claim these were given semi-structured interviews, which I read as not structured, because that's what I know from
Right.
from psychology, from psychiatry. When we say something is semi-structured, it's really not very structured.
Right.
And I mean, it's not social science, but quite close. I'm not such a fan of how we do things, but yeah. So this is, and we're not given any information on what they're asked or how it's noted, how like there are no ages, no how long they've worked, not even which classes they teach. I find quite.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw this interview. There's also the corresponding interview of some of these teachers on ABC Australia, and they were the ones that came forth. They were very young. They can't have been teaching for more than 2 years. They also didn't give any concrete examples there. It was just the atmosphere and a feeling, and so that I kept waiting for these concrete examples. Because when you do qualitative interviews, at least there should be examples. I mean, otherwise what are you noting? But not even that. It was just vague language about their feelings.
Yes, there was maybe 2 or 3 examples they gave in the whole paper about misogynistic activities of boys. Maybe we can talk about those later, but because they were just, the examples they gave were just told you a whole lot about the study. It's just, they were, let's just say, weak.
Yeah,
Anyway,
dramatic claims based on almost nothing of any import.
oh boy.
Amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead here. Employing Connell's hegemonic masculinity, we suggest boys' sexist practices towards their teachers and girl peers forms part of a strategy of gender inequality legitimization, stabilizing and reinvigorating a regressive male supremacy. Yeah. So male supremacy is coming back as if it ever existed to begin with.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well done. Well said. Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But they are, and they're trying to say that all these researchers in the past have found this, and now we're finding more of it. It's like, no, you're not. Oh well. Should we go ahead?
Yeah, that was also one of my comments here, is that they sort of use, and that's in one single paragraph. They're talking about all the rampant sexism, saying how this was always a problem and now it's revitalized. And then they use the word calcified, which is that they couldn't make up their mind. And then I would, if they're talking about, well, the whole article is about how rampant sexism is now. I mean,
Right.
Could you at least give me a graph? I'd really like a graph.
Yes. I know. I kept waiting for numbers or a graph or something. And all of those articles we showed before, when we were doing the intro, none of them had graphs. None of them had numbers. There was nothing that proved anything. It was just all this yakety yak.
Yeah.
Oh well. Let's see. These behaviors represent a backlash from boys and men who perceive a loss of gendered power in the post-Me Too era and have implications for girls and women in schools.
Yeah, that one really says it all. And this is the point that keeps coming up over and over again, is that anytime a boy expresses a feeling that feminism is anti-male, that Me Too is an unjust social phenomenon, that accusations without evidence and the resulting loss of reputation and damage to a man's career, or indeed a boy's standing amongst his peer group or in school, that these are serious miscarriages of justice. Any expression by a boy that feminism is anti-male is perceived as male supremacist and misogynistic. So no matter what you do, if you accept that you are an oppressor and that you subjugate women and your masculinity is potentially toxic, then you're a misogynist. Maybe you're a recovering one. But if you don't accept it, if you object to it and say that it's unfair and wrong, then you're an even worse misogynist. So it's a perfect circle. Any resistance is taken as proof that you're an oppressor. It's really striking.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that you can't be recovering a misogynist because, in feminist language, if you're canceled, you're canceled. There's no coming back. They're so vindictive. If once labeled misogynist, there's no coming back. Then you're dead. They strike down so hard, which is why I find this so dangerous, because they're criminalizing these boys. There's no coming back for them if they're labeled the sexist, these poor boys. And when you say these behaviors, I would like to sort of have them, because the behaviors that they do mention, to me, they're normal behaviors from what I would expect from boys, from teenage boys. They're very focused on sex. They're very, they're exploring. It's how they banter. So I would have liked them to sort of these are normal behaviors for boys, and this is what we're seeing that's not normal behavior for boys. That would be sort of maybe resembling academic rigor, at least that. But they're just saying this represents backlash from boys. Can they prove causation? That's in any way difficult, but just to sort of say that this represents the backlash is just so out there, because they don't define what these behaviors are, or what's normal, or what's pathological behavior.
And boys are pathological because they're not like girls.
Yes, that's essentially it.
That's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
just clear that they talk to people. They're just so used to talking to people who just agree with them. They're
Yeah.
not. They never have to defend these views. It's so clear the way that their language, the way they use these terms, that no one's ever said, "Hold up, what do you mean by that?"
Right.
They just take it
Yeah.
as they take it for granted.
That's
Hmm.
misogynist to say that.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's
And of
actually
course, even to say that boys are boys, boys behave in these ways, boys are interested in sex, they don't accept any of that. All of those are simply ways that we, the complicit, justify misogyny.
and
So
patriarchy.
yeah, patriarchy,
Exactly.
etc. And if you ask for an explanation, that was one of the examples that's given in the report. Anyone who's listening to this and is wondering what's in this report, I really would encourage anyone to read it. It's astounding how thin the examples are and
It
how
is.
inconclusive the data that has been provided. So I mean, there are so few examples provided, but those that are given are not clear examples of misogyny at all. Not a
No.
single one of them. One boy is quoted as saying that he hates women. Women suck, and that rather than being taken as a red flag of a boy's distress, or being an occasion for the teacher to speak to him about, why do you say that? What's happened to you that makes you feel that way? Is it that you've read articles by feminists saying, why can't we hate men? Is it because you've seen the mugs that feminists proffer that say, I bathe in male tears? Is it because you've seen the slogan that the future is female? Is it because you've read something by Julie Bindel explaining why she hates men? Is it because you've seen all of these campaigns to promote girls that say the future is female, and that you've seen in your own school that there are all sorts of opportunities for girls to get mentorship or to have opportunities for scholarships that are not given to boys? Is this the reason, or is there some other reason? I mean, the lack of empathy, the lack of
Yeah.
understanding of the anti-male context that some of this resistance arises from is just really extraordinary. And one of the
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
brought forward as a piece of evidence of the allegedly misogynistic atmosphere in the schools is that boys say things like, you have to explain yourself. Could you explain yourself? They're challenging their teachers.
Right.
Exactly as Hannah said, these people are so used to existing in the echo chamber of their ideology. And they are so used to the idea that any form of dissent is absolutely unacceptable. They think they should be able to dictate everything these boys say and even what they think about themselves as male and about girls and women. They're so used to that even a boy saying, how do you defend your statements, strikes them as misogynistic.
Right. Right. Yes,
Exactly.
and it's a joy to watch a feminist actually try and defend herself. It's kind of, when it happens, it's fun to watch, but it's very rare.
It's pretty darn rare.
Anyway, should we
Yeah.
go on to some of the clips that we've or quotes that we've taken from this
Yeah, just
article?
so people get a
Yeah.
sense of the language, the
Yes,
parameters, the
and
assumptions.
we'll leave a link below to
Mhm.
this study, and please do read it. It is actually pretty interesting to read just from the perspective that we've shown so far. So let's see what we've got
Mhm.
here. Yeah, should someone want to read that?
Yeah, sure, I'll read it. The particularly virulent form of misogyny that is symptomatic of the masculinity espoused by Tate, by the way, never given any examples, and seemingly attractive to millions of boys and men, is partly predictable in the post Me Too era because, quote, a quote from our friend Michael Flood, given that backlash represents the defense of privilege, it may intensify with progress toward gender equality.
Okay.
So that's the kind of language. I mean, it's turgid, it's academies. Many of the concepts that they are expressing are man bad, woman good,
Right.
male is oppressor, woman is innocent victim. We just hear that over and over and over again. But this one I thought, and this is actually, Hannah, you highlighted this statement in your discussion of the report, and I just thought it was a brilliant point. Here's the perfect circle of feminist illogic. Backlash represents the defense of privilege.
Mm, mm,
There it
mm.
is. Thank you. So, anytime someone objects to the way he's being treated, that's him defending his privilege.
Yes.
Hmm.
Keeps it nice and simple.
Yeah, and that's and they're also saying, this is them saying, if you disagree, that just means that you're a sexist,
Yeah,
right? That's just, you dare disagree, that means you're a sexist.
That's
It's
right.
I
it's
don't know if you
incredible.
said it, Janice, why it's incorrect, because it's not privilege, it's right. If you're encroaching on rights on over a sustained period of time, that's when you get the backlash. So they just
Mhm.
sort of twisted it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is exactly how feminist so called scholarship has worked in academia for the last 40 years. You have a
Hmm.
feminist ideologue who comes forward and makes a preposterous series of statements about the position of women in a patriarchal society and how men supposedly benefit from rape and violence against women and what hegemonic masculinity is and what the benefits to men are of upholding it and so on. And we get statements like this, that backlash represents the defense of privilege. And we've all heard feminists say this. Oh, yes, when you have privilege and when you're forced to give up your privilege, that sometimes feels like inequality. When male advocates are trying to talk about what's going on in the family
Right.
courts, for
Right.
example,
Hmm.
and what
Right.
happens to a man whose wife decides she's tired of him and wants to divorce him and doesn't want him to have any role in her life or the lives of her children anymore.
Yep.
Anytime you try to talk about this, you hear, oh, yes, when you have to give up privilege, it feels like inequality. And so that's exactly this. And so you have ideologues who create these so called theories, but they're not based on anything other than the ideology. And then it gets cited and recited and recited until you have a whole body of scholarship that seems to be like an edifice of hundreds and hundreds of scholars all citing one another, so that it seems as if there's something real here. And it,
Yep.
it isn't. It's an edifice based on nothing except bigotry and ideology.
Hmm.
And this is such a good one. Yeah, backlash. We all know that backlash can mean a variety of things. In particular, it means that people feel that their basic human dignity and their basic human rights are being encroached upon, exactly as Hannah said. It doesn't mean necessarily that it has anything to do with defending privilege. Prove that
Hmm.
boys ever had privilege before you start talking about that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And it's
False
funny that they keep
accusations.
talking about Me Too, the hashtag Me Too. It's not they mention hashtag Me Too a couple of times in the paper.
Yes.
And these are 11, 12-year-old boys, right? They were 5 when
Yeah.
that just struck me, as it's clear that this is coming from, these are the opinions of women in their 30s who were very affected by Me Too and would put that sort of, that's where their thoughts go.
Yeah.
But these kids have never, that probably never heard of Me Too because it's old news by now.
Hmm.
Well, and they certainly had no privilege to, have
Yeah,
lost. Like, as
that's
you say, I mean, and that is the other, I'm glad you pointed out that because that was the other thing I wanted to say. This is amazing that this is a study talking about misogyny and threats to female teachers' dignity and how the atmosphere is so difficult that some of these poor teachers feel that they should leave the profession. And they're talking about teachers who teach boys as young as 11 years old.
Right. Right.
11 and 12, some are older. They apparently they go up to, I think, 17 was
Yeah.
the oldest. But what kind of privilege are you talking about? Like you said, these are little kids who were 5 years old when Me Too happened. All they've grown up knowing is that when girls complain, if a girl accuses you of something, you're in deep trouble. That's
Mm-hmm.
what their privilege consists of. This reminds me of a
Well
father
said.
that I used to know who was involved in the men's rights movement after his wife divorced him and tried to
Mm,
deprive him of the right to parent his child. And his son told him that on the playground once, when he was in the first grade, a little girl came up to him and said, "I can hit you and you can't hit me."
right.
These kids know what the score is as early as grade 1. The girls
Yeah.
know they do have privilege. They can complain about the boys, and something will be done to those boys, whether the complaint has a basis in reality or not. And the boys know that if the girls do things to them, they might as well not bother to complain. They'll just have to suck it up because the teachers aren't going to discipline the girls. And they
Mm-hmm.
also know that they are going to be in big trouble if the girl decides to make a serious complaint about them.
Yep. Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Should we go to the next one?
Yes.
Let's see what we got. I'll read this one. The fixedness seemingly suggested by the concept of hegemonic masculinity has been particularly critiqued by post-structuralists' research, where concerns about how masculinity masculinity typologies invisibilize the role of agency
Can't even read
in
it.
reproducing, I'm having a hard time, reproducing or resisting a harmful masculine norm, and fails to contest the gender binary, see Walling, are explored.
Why not? Why not seawalling? I mean, where's the citation? Where's the citation? There's zero academic rigor here. I can't even. It's like, look over here, look over here. No, no, look over here. It's just, they're just
Squirrel.
expecting us to be lost. I mean, I think it was sort of tailored to me because I read it. I'm obviously not a native English speaker, so I read it and read it. I was like, there's something wrong with me. I just don't get it.
I have the same
I just don't get
experience.
it. And he's just, and I showed it to my husband because he was years in academia, really years, and taught and everything. And he just said, this isn't even worth a bachelor's thesis. He's like, this is the worst he's ever seen. And he's like, you could just see his face like, and he's like, no. It was so funny, but it's like there's no definition. They just throw in just term after term without bothering to define it. So that was that gender binary that's also not defined, just assuming that everyone, because they're used to it, everyone just agrees with them, everyone just knows what they're talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy stuff.
I threw this one in just so anybody who does not want to read the full report but wants to get a flavor of it can get a flavor of it. And
Yeah.
this is taken from the first part of the report where they're allegedly laying out their terms, the framework for their research, the scholarship that they're building on. And so they have a section where they talk about critique of the notion of hegemonic masculinity. And you would think at that point, because they're relying on this notion of hegemonic masculinity, you'd think at that point that they might mention perhaps that there are non-feminists critiques of hegemonic masculinity, that some people don't even believe there is such a thing as
Yes.
hegemonic masculinity, or don't believe that it's a terrible problem. And
Mhm.
I mean, hegemonic simply means widespread, dominant, most common, really. Uh, but they don't acknowledge that anyone in academia has ever outright rejected the usefulness of the concept of hegemonic masculinity. And we know that there are. I mean, Paul Nathanson, for
Mhm.
example, is a good friend of mine and has written 4 books about
Mm,
misandry, um, with Catherine.
young.
Oh, I'm forgetting her. Young, yes. Anybody who hasn't read that quartet of fantastic books, I strongly encourage you to do so.
Agree.
And he has critiqued extensively the notion of hegemonic masculinity as something that is damaging through and through. And yet they, of course, don't mention any of those things. The only way it is possible to critique a feminist concept is to take another feminist concept and critique it. So in this case, we've got feminist concepts, and then we have post-structuralist feminist concepts that you can bring in to show how we're aware that there are even wackier feminist theories that we could also use. But and also this sentence, I just love it. I mean, I won't bore everybody by going through and showing. I think there's actually a subject verb agreement error in that second clause, and it may be a, I don't know, it's a predicate missing a subject, and it's a passive voice all the way. That are explored at the end is a good signal that the writers have completely lost control of
Yeah.
their sentence. Like they don't even know what their sentences
No, no.
mean or how they work
Oh, the
syntactically.
concept.
They're just so
Losing
happy
control
with
of your
themselves.
sentence.
They're like, words, look.
Yeah, just
And actually, that's not the worst one. That's pretty bad, but it's not the worst. I think the one coming up is a little bit worse, unless I'm mistaken. Should we go to the next one?
sure. Yeah.
Who wants
yes.
that one?
Oh, this one's so good.
You want to read it, Hannah?
No. Janice is much better. Let's have Janice read it. I
All right,
enjoy that.
We then explicate our methods and conceptual framework before presenting the data, structured around 3 somewhat overlapping but analytically delineated strands. 1, Tate's ideas and tropes and his influence on boys' behavior. 2, persistent and overt displays of male supremacy in classrooms. And 3, sexism towards teachers and girls.
May I?
Oh,
Yes.
please.
It's funny that they say somewhat overlapping because they're completely overlapping, right? It's like
Yes,
saying
exactly.
we're going to prove this and they're all the same thing. Or
Yes.
displays of male supremacy would be in their mind the influence of boys' behavior, as would the sexism towards girls. Like saying, I'm going to prove this thing. Look, here's this thing that I can't
Yeah.
even. As the teens say, I can't deal. But that
Yeah.
was it was just like, what, they're completely the same thing.
Indeed.
Complete lack of
Yeah.
academic
How
rigor.
are they analytically delineated? I have no idea. We're gonna yes, we're going. Our data is structured around 1, men are bad and mean towards women. 2, men are bad and mean towards women. 3, men are bad and mean
Exactly.
towards women.
Yeah. And this was the most structured. This was the closest they came to sounding like an academic paper, where they actually tried to
Yeah.
structure we're going to do this now. And you think, okay, so the protein is coming, is what I thought. And then you're like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, I got stuck back on explicate our methods and conceptual framework. I mean, we're talking about some qualitative interviews. I mean, explicate our methods? It's like, what?
Which methods?
Oh, well.
Name your methods.
Overkill, crazy stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Next one?
Yeah.
All right. I'll read it. They observed boys' alignment with Tate's ideology and its manifestation in sexist classroom interactions, coupled with boys' expressed admiration for Tate's overt and exorbitant wealth as a complementary part of an appealing model of masculinity. Interviewees report feeling powerless to counter these views. Yeah. I thought that was the most important piece of the whole daggone article. What they're telling you is, they say interviewees report, so they're talking about all of them. All of the interviewees they talked to reported feeling powerless to counter these views. Here's a teacher who's at least 20 years old or 30 years old dealing with an 11 to 10-year-old boy who's powerless when he's talking about Andrew Tate? What?
Yeah.
That just doesn't make any sense.
It really is. There's so many things wrong with the picture of the classroom that's being painted by this report. I mean, for one thing, because I want to say this, I don't even understand why they're talking about Tate at all.
Right.
Why is this a subject? He is he's a guy with a following indeed on YouTube. Maybe you guys disagree with me on this, but I don't think this should have any place in the classroom at all. Isn't there enough to teach as it is without taking time away to talk about Andrew Tate and try to dictate to boys what they're supposed to think about him, which isn't going to work anyway? because they're boys. They're going to have their thoughts. They're going to resist having a female teacher tell them that they shouldn't care about this man who talks to them in ways that they find engaging. Like,
Yes.
just let's have some learning. Teach
Yes.
these kids to read analytically. Teach them the countries of the world and the capital cities and the
Yes.
oceans and the river systems and the main exports of each country, and the industries, and like there's
Oh,
so many things to
Yeah.
learn.
I agree,
The
Janice. To
like
But we
it's just
love.
still don't know, like,
ridiculous.
but we still don't know which classes this was going on in. Like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
I can
And we don't know
understand
what was going
if
on
the
either.
and
Hmm.
we also don't know what these views are really, because what we were given was atmosphere and feelings.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
well, there was one example which I understand. There was one of the boys supposedly said women have more accidents, so they
Oh yeah.
shouldn't drive cars.
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
I
He
was
said
just
that
thinking,
Tate said that. Yeah. Hmm.
which he has. I've also heard that, and thought, okay, interesting. But it's that a teacher can't counter a
Really?
boy, a teenage boy,
Really?
saying women shouldn't drive cars. Is that really so difficult?
Write me a
Like, should
paper on
that
it.
really be a problem? Yeah, exactly.
Prove
That's the
it.
good Tom has such good
Yeah.
ideas. Tom saved me with my boy, so just deferring to Tom on this. But this is
It's
that they
it's
feel powerless
Yeah.
it's
It's
because
so
ridiculous.
simple. It's
yeah,
so
I know.
simple for a teacher to turn it into an educating moment. To
Yeah.
say, "Oh, so you like Tate? Write me a paper on Tate, or tell
Hmm.
me the
yeah,
list 10 things you like about Tate." I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do with this, but to feel
Yeah.
powerless says something.
Incredible.
And Janice, I agree wholeheartedly that bringing Tate into this is like it doesn't make any sense, and it shows how desperate they are. These people are desperate. I mean, that's my take from all of this. This is desperation. They don't know what
yeah,
else to do. And so the
Hmm.
one thing they can do is try and grab someone from the internet who's very, very popular, who has said some provocative sorts of things about women, and make him the fall guy, and say that these boys, everything is wrong because of this. This whole thing is just
yeah.
so weak. It's so
Yeah.
weak.
It's amazing. It is amazing. And and it's partly that, and this is very much a well-known feminine trait, that these teachers are personalizing everything. They
Huh?
despise Tate. I assume that many of them have actually not watched
Right.
much or
Mm-mm.
any
They
of
couldn't
him.
have
They just
had. Yeah.
have
Yeah,
heard that he's a
that was
self-declared
clear. That
misogynist,
was
so
Yeah.
then they want to dictate to the boys that they are not to like Tate. It's a
Yeah.
losing proposition because the boys have probably consumed many hours of Tate's videos, so they know that what the teachers are telling them is either completely false or is not the whole story.
Yes.
And so it's a losing proposition from the very beginning.
Yep.
But even if the teachers didn't take it so personally and said, "Look, I'm not an expert on Tate, um, and I'm interested in hearing pros and cons
Right.
of what he
Right.
has to say. Let's have a
Right.
discussion about him. Let's hear from the girls and what they think about him. Let's hear from the boys and
Precisely.
what they think, and just make it into a discussion." And
Yes.
as you said, the thing about, I mean, for one thing, I assume that boy was probably just seeing what kind of reaction he would get when he said that Tate
Yeah.
says that girls, or women shouldn't drive cars. You could say, well, most accidents are committed by drivers who are, in the 16 to 24 category. Do you think that we should prohibit people
Right.
who are
Right.
age 16 to 24 from driving just
Easy.
because they are overrepresented in accidents? Or, you could get
Exactly.
into a whole discussion of
Easy.
statistics and how you draw conclusions from statistics. It would be really fascinating. Let's have an argument
yeah.
then about
Yep.
whether who should be able to drive cars.
Yep.
And yeah, it's that. Yeah, and also just the total lack of empathy at all, that utter lack of interest in what these boys are thinking, what's behind
It's amazing.
their their perceptions. Yeah, and also, like, I have to say, it makes me think that these people should not be in the classroom at all.
Right.
If you are so weak in your ability to communicate, that you can't respond to boys of 11 years or 12 saying something or joking about Tate. Like a lot of the stuff was, the boys joke about Tate. They sort of laugh over things
Yes.
that he says. Like there's nothing misogynistic necessarily at all about it, at
Yeah,
all. Like they
at
just,
all.
He's a
they're trying to
character.
figure out, yeah, he's a character. He says some things that are incredibly powerful and attractive, in addition to other things that are not
Yeah.
attractive. And so,
Exactly.
like, just,
And
yeah,
that's why
find
he's so
out what,
popular. Yeah,
yeah,
that's why he's
like,
so popular, because 95% of what he says is actually it's true. It's true, and
Yes.
that's why it resonates so strongly with them. But as opposed to the other who are also labeled manfluencers, the others, the who are more positive realm, like Joe Rogan, like Jordan Peterson. Andrew Tate has this sex appeal, right? So he has his flashy cars, he has this. So
mhm.
here it says
Right.
exorbitant wealth. But
Yeah,
when have boys not been interested in wealth? Like the movie
Of
stars,
course.
the famous people, they were always flashy because that's what dragged the attention. So that's, I think, why Andrew Tate has become so popular among them, because he has
Yes.
that. He has that sex appeal. He says outrageous things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
And he's rich.
and he
And
also,
girls
yeah, but
flock to him.
a part of his business model was
Yes.
that he made boys make these reels for him of him speaking. So that's also why he had such reach on social media, because that was
Yes.
a part of his thing that he has. So he has all these reels of him going around. So that's also part
Absolutely.
of it. But
And
he and they also, like, one thing that I really found, I mean, as a conservative, I think I found it slightly insulting that they would call Tate traditional. That's another one of these examples
yeah,
that they don't
mhm,
define it. They just lump everything that are slightly to the right of their own beliefs as
yes.
this. No one in their right mind would call Tate traditional.
no,
I mean, he's the sex drive. Was it the porn? Was that so traditional for them? The whole thing about all the sex, like, that's not. So that's when they sort of lost me. That they have
Yes.
no idea what they're
no,
talking about, and they have
yeah,
Indeed.
no idea. They've completely unlearned, or they're completely oblivious to how boys work. What is normal boyish behavior? The bantering. That's how boys figure each other out. They're like poking at each other to see, are you tough? Can you deal? What are you made of? And the
Right.
boys who can't do that, they're excluded. And
Yes.
that's like, I mean, this is we know this, but they're completely oblivious to it.
Yep.
yeah, I know.
And there's
It's just
something
Yeah.
else
incredible.
going on here too, I think, and that is that one of the things Andrew Tate does for boys is he tells them that they have value, that they have some value. I think that's what really gets these teachers. He tells them, look,
Yeah.
strive, get in there and try hard and kick ass and do what you can do. And you can do it. You can do it, man. And these boys have heard, that they're oppressors for the whole time in school, that there's something wrong with them, that masculinity is toxic. And here along comes a guy who's saying, get out there and kick ass, man, kick ass. Who's not going to like that? God.
Yeah, I
I mean,
know,
it's just, they
exactly.
need
And
to
even this
hear
thing,
that.
well, and expressed admiration for Tate's overt and exorbitant wealth. So now they're dictating what level of wealth is appropriate and what isn't.
Yep. There you
I mean,
go.
it's like, and somehow suggesting that it's misogynistic
It's
to
crazy.
pursue wealth and to have lots of beautiful cars. I
Beautiful
mean, it's
women.
just like, so it's
That gets them
incredible. Like,
too.
I read one article in the Guardian that actually said that it was also about Tate and his influence and how it was creating all this misogyny in classrooms, and they had even got it down to the point that a boy saying, "What color is your Bugatti?" I think that's what he said, the name of the car. Apparently, that's a meme. What color is your Bugatti?
Yeah.
That was sexist.
Why? How could that be sexist?
Because it's something that Tate says, and it's
Anything he says is sexist.
it's a put down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if somebody starts
Exactly.
lecturing you, you say, "What color
Uh-huh.
is your Bugatti?" And
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, this is
That's pretty
yeah,
good.
it's paranoia. and it really if I
Yeah.
wanted a proof that these teachers shouldn't be coming within 100 yards, 100 miles of any classroom, this is it.
Yes.
They should be gone. They
Yeah.
can't do this job. They're
Really.
not
Good
smart
riddance.
enough. I'm not saying that
Yes.
there are no smart women around, but I think it is true that I think female teachers in general are not of the highest intellectual caliber anymore. I think they used to be,
Huh.
because smart women used to go into
Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah.
Now, smart women go into other things.
Huh.
They become
Interesting.
business leaders, they become
Agree.
Hmm.
CEOs, they become
Yeah.
doctors, they become
Yeah.
lawyers, etc. They become psychiatrists,
Huh.
and
Yeah.
they don't tend to be primary school or even high school teachers.
Huh.
And so, very low IQ women in general become teachers, and they're just not up to the task. I think probably by the time they're 12, many boys, especially the smart boys, are intellectually superior
Huh.
to the teachers that they're encountering. And that is a huge problem. Even aside from Tate, aside from everything else, these are boys who are starting to question. They're starting to figure out who they are, where they are in the world. They're
Huh.
trying to explore the world of ideas. And to have a
Yeah.
mediocre and aggrieved, narcissistic, fragile woman trying to boss that boy around, take Tate out of the equation, we can shut down the whole manosphere. It's
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
going to be a problem. And
Trouble.
that is the real issue here. These women aren't good enough to do the job, and they shouldn't be there with especially with their feminist ideology and their whole mindset of victimhood.
Yeah. Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Should we go to the last one? Because I
yeah.
think we got one more quote left. Should we go to that one?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Let's see what we got. I think I got them right.
Yeah, this I wanted to include this one just because this is like the second last or maybe even the last paragraph. This is their conclusion. Reflecting on the findings, we suggest the need for open conversations in schools. Yeah, right. To
Yeah.
allow
Right.
women, oh, so they're not so open to allow women to disclose their experiences of victimhood, of course, and to invite dialogue,
Of
oh,
course.
really, about the influence of the manosphere on boys developing identities in relationships. Just the lies, all the gaslighting, I guess, as people would say.
Yeah.
No, they're not interested in open conversations. If they were, they'd be having them about Tate. They are not
Yes.
interested. They are
Yes.
interested in
Exactly.
authoritarian pronouncements from which you are
Hmm.
not allowed to deviate, especially if you're a boy, but I'm sure even if you're a girl, you're not allowed to deviate.
Yep.
And they're only interested in the female teachers' experiences. Of course, the male teachers who are probably having a very different kind of experience in the classroom,
Yes.
that they are of no account either.
Yes.
So it's all
Hmm.
lies, and it really all they're saying at the end here is that we want to have more discussions about how terrible boys are and how victimized their teachers are, and we want to figure out more ways that we can tell them to shut up and to know their place.
I think
Exactly.
there were a
Yeah.
couple of places where they implied that the male teachers were not having these problems. They didn't come out and
Yeah,
say it, but there was an implication that
yeah,
the men aren't troubled by this. And
yes,
Janice said, I told Janice that, and she said, "Yep, good reason for all male teachers." And I said,
yeah,
"Yeah,
Yeah, there was a whole
for
section. It
boys,
was just advocating for all male,
yes,
yeah,
or all boys
yes,
schools, all,
boys
yeah,
and
need
they're
men.
doing. It's a lot better for boys to be in
Yes, they
all.
yeah.
need
We
men.
know this. They perform much better.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
so obvious when you read reports. They're just crying out to be
Yeah.
Yeah,
taught and to be helped formed by men who can help them understand who they are as males who are going to
yes,
become
Yeah.
men. They
yes,
don't
Yeah.
want to be taught by fragile women. Many of them have already grown up in a home where they're either raised by a single mom who's already
Hmm.
telling him all this stuff, or
yep,
in some cases, a mom and a dad who's afraid to contradict the mom because he knows if he does, he's going to be out the door. And so they're really looking for male role models. And like, it's just incredible to me how uncaring all of these teachers and researchers are. They couldn't give a damn
And,
about an 11-year-old boy's needs. All they
yep.
care about is that a 36-year-old woman isn't happy in her job. It's
Yeah, it
incredible.
was
It's
screamed
pretty crazy.
resentment.
And boys want to be
But
challenged. They want to be
yeah,
challenged. I was talking about my son last night, and he was saying, one of the teachers he really remembers in high school was this teacher who pushed him to lift weights and kept pushing him, telling him, "You can do better than that. Come on, get in there and do it again." And then finally he said the thing that really made him feel good was the teacher finally said to him, "You work out when other people don't." And it was like he remembered that challenge,
yeah,
that push, but then that blessing, that comes. This is what boys want. This is what they want. Women can't give that to them. They can't. They can give them a lot of things, but not that. That takes
yeah.
someone who's got testosterone. A lot of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the conclusion made me it upset me a lot because I would expecting some, at least at the end, maybe some concern for the boys. We have to see, where this is coming from, more investigate. It's so easy to just say there should be more research into this, but it was
Uh-huh.
all they were talking about was how this impacts girls,
Right.
how girls this, how girls that, the how girls can speak up. It was evil. That was the only thing came. This was evil towards boys.
Yes.
Not once did they show concern or interest in what might be lying behind. That like boys need to be channeled, and this was just how we could like like you said before, Janice, how where this resentment in the boys come. I do think that boys feel resentful because
Yeah.
this has been they have been uh, oppressed, and their normal boyish behaviors, their normal behavior is being suppressed, and that's gonna be channeled towards something. And a big problem here is that they're labeling it a problem, and then
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
trying to solve it, and they're mentioning that in the paper, how they tried this intervention and letters to the parents, and then they
Yeah.
did a big meeting where they talked about it. So they're calling it they're calling this pathological, and then they labeling it a problem, and then they come with interventions instead of
Yes.
saying like, how can we rechannel these behaviors that aren't what, let's say there are behaviors that are unwanted. For example, one of the boys spit in a glass of water, in a teacher's glass of water, which isn't great. Like, I wouldn't be happy if my son spit in a glass of water. But then again, like, bullying has always been a problem. We have less bullying now than ever before, and boys tease. And when a teacher shows them a vulnerability, like with this, like they clearly did, they're going to keep poking at it because they showed, well,
Mhm.
that's what they do. So don't be so freaking fragile.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but no, there was no interest in maybe further research into what we can do for boys so that they don't spit in teachers' waters. But like you mentioned, that it was a great suggestion before from Tama, having them write a paper on maybe compare and contrast Jordan Peterson to Andrew Tate. That would have been a
Yeah.
great paper. Or
Mhm.
sort of saying, if you had take one of the male teachers, have him sit through a couple of interviews of Tate's and be informed, and then use that to have the boys say, how do I reach a goal? That's because that's what boys need now. They need encouragement to
Yes.
envision their life, to say, what is a goal that I would like to reach. And they've shown this. The Petersons did this future authoring program, and they showed
Mhm.
by just having the boys sit down and write, this is what I want to achieve in 3 years, this in 5 years. The
Yeah.
boys outflanked the girls that had previously outperformed them. That was
Mhm.
across the board. So
Huh.
all they needed was someone to say, hey, what do you want for yourself in 3 years or 5 years? So boys aren't even given that. That's how little encouragement boys are given.
Yep.
So go in a room with, instead of the interventions and letters to the parents, sit in a room with them and talk about what they want from their future. And that, even if that's some Andrew Tate, like, I want all that money, how are you going to get it? And then use some of Andrew Tate's stuff to get them there. That's not so difficult, but not even that. No, it has to be how is being shushed going to impact the girls who are already being so encouraged, and you go girl and you can do whatever
Yeah.
you want to do.
Yep.
Yeah. I
Oh,
know.
sorry. That's
It,
my
it,
No, no,
it,
no,
it,
no,
no,
no.
I absolutely agree.
Yes.
And I was struck when I published my essay on this report on my Substack newsletter. I had a couple feminists come in. I guess they're not my regular readers. They saw the title, and their reaction was to be outraged. And
Of
I had
course.
one lecturing me about how, up until 1970, women didn't have any rights at all. They didn't have the right to choose. They couldn't divorce their husbands. They couldn't, she went on and on and on. And I mean, most of it was not true. But even if it had
Right.
been true, it had nothing to do with the article. It had nothing to do with this subject. But it was so exemplary of the attitude of feminists in general. And this was actually a feminist teacher. And I said to her, even if all of the things you've said are true, why does that in any way mitigate what is being discussed from this report?
Mhm.
How would it make it right if girls had been terribly, terribly oppressed up until 1970? Why would it be right then in 2024 for boys to be treated in this way? And it clearly, she didn't answer, of course, but that
Silence.
is feminist ideology does very much involve that notion of revenge, and that's
Yes.
what these many of these teachers have, at least as an unconscious and in some cases quite conscious part of their attitude,
Huh.
is that these boys deserve to be badly treated because they're the sons or the grandsons or the great grandsons of some mythical person of patriarchal privilege. And so if they're kept down, if they're
Yeah.
made to feel bad about themselves, if they're given very few opportunities to achieve, if they're just left feeling bitter and lonely and isolated and full of anger and resentment, that's a good thing, because
Right.
that's
We'll
what
get them
women and
back.
girls allegedly experienced at some point in the
Right.
past. That's
Yeah.
really scary. And as you say, Hannah, it is evil. An ideology of collective punishment is evil. It leads to really horrific things being done in the
Yeah.
name of social
Yes.
justice. And people
Yeah,
will look
because we
the
they
other way.
already have. They already
Yes.
have laws, and they already have rules. I mean, you spit in a teacher's word, and that I keep saying that because that was the worst example. That was the only time where I thought, okay, that's not great behavior. All the other things were like, atmosphere and feelings. But
Yes.
so that's why I keep saying about the spitting in the water.
Yeah.
That would already be grounds for, I don't know, suspension or
Yeah.
whatever. We already
Something.
have it. No, it's not enough. It
No.
has to be criminal. It has
Yeah.
to be, they have to really stamp it out. They have to really suffer. And like with cancel culture, there's no coming back. Like once the feminists have targeted you and said you did bad, it's like they don't want to hear from you ever again. Only death is good enough, or
You're
Mhm.
dead.
constant self-flagellation.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yes, and that, of course, that's what they want to do in Britain now. In the UK, they're bringing in a new law where boys' bad behavior in school will actually be classified as a form of violent extremism. In other words, like a
Mhm.
terrorist ideology, and they will be referred to someone in government in the counterterrorism program. So, can
Oh
you
God.
imagine giving these teachers the power to refer boys as young as who knows what to a counterterrorism expert who will then interview them? They will be labeled, they'll be tracked, all of these things. And I'm sure something similar will be proposed in Australian law as well. And that's what, I mean, feminism is at its base a carceral ideology. It wants these boys to be locked up or under surveillance or in some way criminalized and harshly punished merely for dissenting from feminism.
Yes. Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a one point in the report where it said that some women now were afraid of identifying themselves as feminists in the classroom, and I thought, well, that's the one good thing that I read in the whole thing. Why are they identifying themselves as feminists? Why
Really?
should ideology be brought into learning at all? They should be
Exactly.
leaving all of that at the door. Nobody wants to hear about what their ideology is. I don't think I should have the right to tell my students what I believe and think about a whole range of political and ideological issues. I owe it to them to do the best job I can presenting the material and helping them to understand and engage with it and helping them to develop their skills, not lecturing them about what they're supposed to believe. It's incredible.
What a concept.
Yeah. No, but it's the school system is tailored to people who are very agreeable. And we see this now in
Yes.
boys who are more
Yes.
disagreeable than girls usually are. It's just easier for girls to sit and obey and be polite. But for boys, when someone tells them do this, it's more likely that they'll say, why? Why should I
Mm-hmm.
do this? And why
Right.
should I
Yeah.
do that? And please explain yourself. They're just
Mm-hmm.
more disagreeable.
Yeah.
And a male teacher would handle that better because they're just not so fragile.
Yeah.
And they are completely, they're not equipped to handle anything that isn't standard female. You know, even like girls who aren't with that exact temperament, who aren't very agreeable and very shy, they're also being diagnosed now with ADHD.
Oh,
The moms are terrified. They come to me and say, you know, I'm so scared that my boy is going to misbehave, because the teachers will then they can start with the diagnosing process, and I don't want these medications. And I
I
mean,
was going to say.
the parents are terrified. They're also powerless against these teachers who, the moment you show a little bit of disagreeableness and a little bit of extroversion and wanting to go and play, that's pathological.
Wow. You're right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Crazy, crazy. Are we finished?
Yeah. Did you want to show the clip of Tate?
I was wondering about that.
Do you
I
think
was
we've
thinking
gone too long already?
well, what I was thinking was maybe we should stop this one now and do another video now on the Tate stuff and the Peterson stuff. It'd be a real short one, but it would be like an addendum to what we're talking about now. But what do you guys think about that? We could go ahead and do the Tate stuff now on this one.
Let's
We've
just
already
show the
gone-
Tate. Let's
You wanna
just
show the Tate?
finish with it. Yeah, just
Show the
as a
Tate and shut up,
counter
Tom.
all this.
Okay. All right. So let's see. How can we do this? So we've talked a lot about this crazy feminist stuff and how they're using Andrew Tate as being the bait, right? Tate the bait. And what we wanted to do is show you a little bit of Tate in order to give you a sense of what he's really saying. So hang on. Let's see what he's got to say.
What do you say to young men who come to you for advice?
I say that life as a man is exceptionally difficult. I say the most beautiful and the most terrifying thing about being a man is you're born without value. Society doesn't care about you. You're only going to be cared about based on how useful you are. You have the chance to build yourself up and become a superhero if you're prepared to do the hard work and be indefatigable enough to never quit. But if you're going to stand around and wait for a handout, nobody's going to ever respect you. And I think that a lot of people have forgotten about how difficult and how competitive it is as a man. We're always in constant competition with each other. And it's your duty as a man to stand up and say, I want to be as important and strong and good-hearted and God-fearing as possible. And I need to work hard to achieve those things.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that is...
Yeah. It's a positive
is.
message.
Yeah, it's a positive message. Now, I'm not saying that every single one of his messages is necessarily as positive as that, although I have to say I've watched a fair number of some very long interviews that he's done,
Yep.
and I found myself agreeing with everything he said.
Yep.
And a lot of it is that it's he identifies the challenges of masculinity in a feminized world, and he says you don't have time to feel sorry for yourself, and nobody's going to care if you do, And so these are the ways that you can overcome the challenges that men face in our world, that men have always faced.
Yes.
And it's very inspiring. I mean, even for me as a woman, obviously not his target audience, really, I always feel, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I want to be encouraged.
Yeah.
I want to have somebody say, yeah, lots of people
can
don't
do it.
care about you, but you can do it. And when you wake up in the morning, he has whole things that I'm sure people would find problematic, where one of his things is he doesn't believe in like clinical depression and things like that. He says, you feel bad, you feel horrible, you don't want to get out of bed, you force yourself and you go even on the days when it's absolutely the last thing you want to do, and you do it, you get through the pain, and you're going to feel better at the end of the day because you did it. Like that kind of message, it's incredibly powerful. I like it. I like to hear it. It's the sort of thing I want to, take into my head every morning, so that, I don't know. I mean, I can understand why boys respond to it much
He's
better.
challenging.
Certainly, than
He's
all the
challenging
feminist
them.
nonsense. Yeah, he's challenging.
You want to feel good? Get off your ass.
Yeah,
That's what he's saying.
It's tough. I mean, he
That's
talks about
the
in
most
that
positive.
video being good-hearted,
Yes,
and God-fearing and all that. I mean, you
Misogynist.
can say, well, he isn't exactly in some ways, but like, the message is incredibly inspiring. And I'm sorry, the boys are going to gravitate towards that with a lot more attraction than the nonsense that they're being given in schools.
Should we play the other clip?
Yeah.
So have another clip that's a little bit more provocative. Let's see what he says here.
Life without children is vapious, and it's inane, and it's pointless. And you may sit here and think that your career matters, but the truth is that your job will fire you out of WIM and not give a second, don't give a solitary shit.
The happiest women on earth have children and a man who's paying the bills and their mothers. The happiest people. You're a selfish fuck. Fuck that. You should all have kids. Breathe for the rest of the day. If you don't end up in a fucking grave, if you want to sleep in the house where I have to pay fucking bills, you're gonna shut the fuck up, you little prick. Because this is my fucking world, and you exist in my world. If you think you're smart enough to live on your own, run away from home. But if you don't want to play that game, shut the fuck up or I'm gonna hurt.
How are women allowed to drive?
An organization that is primarily run by females is just a fucking bitch fest anyway.
Are you anti-woman?
I love women. In fact, interesting statistic, 100% of the people I've ever had sex with were women. So I love women. I have nothing against women at all. I'm not sexist in any regard. I'm not misogynist either. I'm a realist. Women can't fight. Men are stronger. More true things. I think another thing I said, and maybe I'll upset the ladies on the podcast. I hope not, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Probably will.
I said if I were to get on a plane and that plane was to fly into the eye of a hurricane, there was a 50% chance of it crashing. I'd want a male pilot because I think that males are better under stress and under pressure. I think they're less likely to get emotional in a life or death situation. That's why they make better soldiers. That doesn't mean that doesn't make me misogynist. That doesn't make me sexist. That's just true.
The stuff about women like that they're your property.
That's not what I said. I was talking about an OnlyFans company when that question was asked. But I said that if a woman is going out with a man, she belongs to that man. That's his woman. So if she wants to do OnlyFans, she owes him some money because she's his. Yes, that's what I said.
That's crazy. You think if a man...
I believe that women are beautiful creatures. I just don't think that they're as emotionally calm as men in stressful situations. I don't think they can fight like a man can. And for the same reason, I would never drop my children in an all-male nursery. I think that's strange and weird. I would only drop them in an all-female nursery. But women cannot compete with men at chess. I'm not calling all women stupid. I'm not saying that there aren't some good female chess players. I'm not saying I could be every woman. No, there are great female chess players. But on average, the best chess players in the world are men.
Yep. Well, there we
He's
go.
got some points.
I mean, yeah, there's some bits in there. So he has done. So this was I did a collection of this is the worst. Like this is from feminist YouTubers, or like look how terrible it is. So I just wanted to say, what is the worst that he's saying, about women? And so I do want to say I don't think it's ethically great what he's done with this OnlyFans, that whole business model. He did say that he's a pimp, and there's some controversy around was it trafficking, but he definitely he helped women make these OnlyFans accounts, and then he took a percentage. So and he's clear on that, and that's what I don't find so positive about him, that he talks about acquiring resources, and that's the whole alpha male thing, acquiring resources, which is great. That's normal, but he allows for manipulation and extortion of other people. Like, so he sort of condones that, because anything to be a winner. And that's where I think I would want to steer my sons in a different direction towards the other manfluencers. Let's use the lingo here, where it's about being good and also use your strength to protect the weak, and kindness. And these are concepts that he doesn't discuss that much. It's more about how to be as strong as possible and show your dominance.
Yes.
And if you can use that dominance to get more and exploit the losers, then that's okay behavior. So that's what I take from it, where I think, if you really familiarize yourself with Tate's concept, you can sort of take that and rechannel that towards someone who's a better, like Joe Rogan, like Jordan Peterson, who are positive, strong alpha role models.
Those are villains, aren't they?
Absolutely. They're all misogynists.
Yeah, just different varieties. Yeah.
Yeah, but I had a conversation. Sorry.
Oh, keep going. Yeah.
No, I had just the other week, I had a conversation with two teenagers, so 17 and was 19. And they're like, yeah, Tate, but he's sort of like old news. He was trending. But for them, old news is 6 months ago. So it was like trending 6 months ago. But they were like, yeah, it was all about how to make money. So that was what they focused on. It was that his idea of how to make money and how it was a scam, because they then found out it was a scam and they tried. But what he did, I thought, was great, that he emboldened guys, young boys, to go and ask girls out and say, ask for their numbers. And these boys that listened to him, they're shy, they're more agreeable than the norm, and for them to go and ask for a girl's number is terrifying. And so he was just encouraging exposure therapy, right? Just go and do it until you're not afraid of it anymore. And so so that these two teenage boys, they're like, oh, he's cool, and cars and money. That was so if you have just a small conversation with teens about Andrew Tate, you'll realize that it's not all that. It's not misogyny and let's go get the girls, but it's let's go get girls. Oh, that's the difference. It's not let's go stomp on the girls. They're our property. It's let's go make money so that we can impress girls, which boys have always wanted to do.
Of course. And girls tend to be interested in that sort of man.
Exactly.
So it's silly to pretend that somehow what he's preaching is not valid. It certainly is.
Yeah.
And he has. Yeah, I mean, to me, he just seems like the sort of man that you could have a very long, detailed conversation with. You could challenge him on things he's done, things he's said. He would answer. You could probably come to some, common ground. Like, he's just, I don't know, he's an interesting man.
And he would just do it really fast. He would just talk at you really fast.
I mean, he's got a lot going on upstairs, and he's a manly man. I mean, he was incredibly successful mixed martial arts, was he before?
Yeah.
I mean, he was incredibly good at that. He was also a chess player. His father was a chess champion. I mean, this is a extremely smart.
Janice is quite taken.
I am. Yeah, I am. I mean, I know. He's not my type of man, but well, I like lots of
fair.
And he loves his father.
But he I don't know. I like a man who has positive energy about being male, and I think he does.
Yes, exactly. It's so rare.
Yeah, exactly. It's so rare in these days, and I mean, even I find Jordan Peterson too soft on women. Quite frankly, way too soft. He started off being quite critical of feminism. And I think he's retreated from that because he got so much negative blowback. I think he's much more prepared to criticize men sometimes quite harshly,
Yes, that's correct.
and is not prepared to criticize women and to hold them to the same standards. So
Yes.
I find Tate's
Absolutely.
total
But even Peterson, the
frankness,
feminists take
great
him as an example of a misogynist. You know?
yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
Even though,
I mean, he's
he
absolutely
says,
not at
clean your
all.
room,
Yeah.
stand up straight, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, all those things that Peterson says, and what he's doing the same thing Tate was. He's showing these boys that they have value. That's what Peterson does. He lets boys know that they have value, and they need to take care of that value. And that's an important message for them to get that has not been given to them for decades.
Yeah, for decades, absolutely. And the resentment that, these teachers are recognizing and trying to clamp down on, it is real. As Hannah already said, I think that, and the boys I know, like mostly sons of friends of mine, they are sick to death of feminism, of feminization. They're sick of the way they're taught in schools. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They do feel contempt for feminist ideology, and even in some cases, a certain contempt for women. It's true that I think this does breed a healthy, and maybe sometimes not that healthy, dislike of women.
Yes.
And
And that's what's so dangerous. That's why this
Mm-hmm.
really is dangerous, right? Because it is sowing resentment, and that for these boys, that's much more dangerous than whatever these girls might hear on a Wednesday in a classroom, and then
exactly.
they'll never think of it again.
Yep.
So they hear, girls shouldn't drive cars, but then just grow a bit of a thicker skin. They should that'll probably be the worst thing that they'll ever hear in their lives, right? Because girls are so overprotected. But for these boys to always feel like they're not allowed to stand up for themselves, that can grow serious psychological problems later on for them, and we are seeing that. We are seeing rise in suicide and depression among young men that we hadn't before.
If you feel like you're never going to have a relationship, and the women are the enemy, that women hate you because you're male, like, it's just a horrible message for boys.
Terrible.
And
They're
young
so lonely. And like
Yeah.
they're when we have these incidents of school shooters, even then there's no concern for what the boys might have. No. Then it's gun control. It's again, they're just completely off the mark, just like in this paper. They're just using it for their own for their own feminist gains.
Yeah.
We've seen that over and over again, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, really, I think, they actually want to create problems.
Seems like
because that's what they require. They want unhappy, angry women, and they want men who are so frustrated and so disillusioned and feel backed into a corner that they are like a beaten dog who can make him come out growling. Yeah.
Learned helplessness and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are we finished?
Yeah, but that I think we've said.
So good to be with you,
Probably too much. That was very interesting.
It was
talking
fascinating.
to you guys.
You guys have some very creative ways of looking at things, and I really appreciate it. It's been very
I
good.
appreciated it. It was a great opportunity to vent. So thanks.
Yeah, there you go. That's true too. In a manly sort of way.
Instead of fuming alone.
All right,
No, it's
fair
been
enough.
fun with you too. Thank you so much.
Men
are
good.
Very good. In fact, on that note, we'll end it. Men are good, as are you. Men are good, as are you.